Hey guys, this is Pat Fontaine from XYZ, and you are listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast. Yeah.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Big Strix Vinyl Records and Sports Cards, located in Rock Island, Illinois. New, vintage, and previously owned. You can find it at Big Strix. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Pat Fontaine from XYZ.
And also Puzzle Gut.
They got some one-off dates out there this summer. Look for them out there.
Yeah, check them out.
All right.
Good night. Pat, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Pat, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure. Eric, Jeff, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Well, we're excited to have you. Let's get into this. So XYZ has been performing live and steady off and on since the bands reunited back in the early 2000s. Talk a little bit more about performing as a heritage act now in this, I guess, this era of the rock and roll industry. You know, it's everything has changed.
Very much changed, indeed. You know what's funny is really at the end of the day when we started this, I started the band in 1978 in my basement. I remember it well because it was Running with the Devil, Alan's release, and it was in 78. So this, I thought, hey, I'm going to do this for a couple of years. It's better than getting a real job. And then we'll see how it goes, and it actually morphed into an actual job and a career. It was true that there was a moment of death, really, at late 90s, I think, or mid 90s with Seattle. Of course, everything crashed, and it didn't start again till 2007, I think. That was the first Rocklahoma. That actually the first festival that started to book bands of that era. So yeah, it's kind of you know what? It's the music business. You have no clue where it's going, but the world has changed drastically. It's a completely different world than it was in the 80s when we landed in Hollywood. It's completely different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I guess tell us a little bit about like the tours that you do now. You just go out for like a couple shows on a weekend, or how does it work for the band?
For the time being, yes. Back in the day, of course, we had a crew and a tour bus, and it was like nonstop, and it was 5 shows a week. Now, nobody does that. I don't think so. No. I think it's mostly flying. People get on the plane with a carry-on and their guitars, and that's it. So we kind of do what is feasible financially. To get a crew and a tour bus it's not possible nowadays. It wouldn't work financially. So we do We do we fly in and we fly back, and mostly Europe. We do some festivals in the U.S. We do the Monsters of Rock cruise, out of Miami, that type of thing. We don't really do 2 or 3 shows in a row anymore. That's not the world we live in.
Mm. Well, it seems like 80s AOR music has been reinvigorated. Well, you said like about since 2007 with the various rock cruises, the festivals, the Weekend Warrior flyout stuff. But when it comes to for you and Terry and the rest of the band, how involved are you guys now when it comes to these one-off festivals, the cruises and what have you? Is it something you guys take full advantage of?
Yes, we kind of do. I mean, we relied on really just a handful of promoters out there. There was Rocklahoma, of course. There was M3 in Baltimore. There was Rock Timber in Minneapolis up there in the north. And then the south was pretty good. Florida's always been good. So it's not like you have a massive amount of choices here. It really is aging audience. We're all in our early 60s, really. We had a really good run. And then when you think about it, when we played Hollywood in 85, 86, we played in front of teenagers. And now those teenagers are 55 years old.
That's me.
So it's the same people, really. It's kind of almost rare that we see young kids there, though we do. Sometimes you see a couple of 20, maybe 25, 30 years old, but most of our audience is really in their 50s, late 50s.
Absolutely.
So we take advantage of that on some level because at the same time, it's the age group that has a little bit of money today.
Yeah.
Where when we played the clubs in Hollywood, most people had to barge in to print a fake ticket. So, I mean, it was a completely different, because nobody had money. We were young, we were fucking full of attitude, but we had no money. Today, it's a little bit different because the people that come to our shows have jobs and they can afford a cruise to the Bahamas for a week. And it's a little bit different. So the money is not bad out there. It's actually feasible. What's difficult is you can't really do this every weekend. There's not enough demand.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that with other artists we've talked to. They talk about grouping and getting 2 or 3 bands together of the same kind of early genre and then
package deal.
Yeah, making a package deal out of it. Have you guys been involved with it?
Yes, we try to do that, and that's why festivals are so good. In fact, right now we're trying to line up something with Australia. We were supposed to go there in the COVID time, but that got canceled because of COVID. So now we're going back, and the promoter is trying to put 3-4 bands together, of that same type of music, same era, same vibe, and that's how you make it work, really. Because to just go there and do clubs, it'd be kind of tough, How many clubs in Australia? There's only 4 cities, so there's 4 clubs. And, you know what I mean? It's how much money will you spend to see XYZ on a Tuesday night? I'm not really sure, but that's where the festivals are brilliant, because for the same price, you get to see a lot of bands.
And obviously we know that, album sales and a tangible product are not what they used to be. But on the flip side of it all, we know that merch is big for bands, heritage acts such as XYZ. How in depth does XYZ go on their merch?
Well, actually, you know what? It's funny you said that, because actually most of what we rely on now is merch. We sell T-shirts and CDs and cassettes. Believe it or not, the cassettes from that era are a vintage product now, and people love them. So it's kind of funny that way. But yes, merch is a very, very, very big deal. And when a promoter doesn't want you to do merch or wants to take 50% of the merch, it's always a little bit of a battle. We when we signed a contract to do a show, we absolutely claim at least 80% of the merch. That's what we survive on.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, I guess talk about a little bit about the band. I know since you're not playing quite as much or as often? Do you guys get together and practice and rehearse before you go out?
Yeah, well, our biggest obstacle to that is really not so much our age, because we're in pretty good shape, all of us. Terry's voice is still very, very strong. He's been touring with George Lynch right now, or lately. And I've seen some of the shows. His voice is great, and we're all in pretty good shape. We do have a little bit of an alcohol situation with Tony, our guitar player. So he's been in rehab a few times this year. I don't mind saying it, because he doesn't mind saying it. So that's a little bit of obstacle. But beside that, we kind of feel pretty lucky. Nobody's in a wheelchair, and that's kind of fantastic, really. And we deal with a little bit of that alcohol thing with Tony. I personally barely drink anymore. I know Terry never really did. And so we're in pretty good shape, and that's why we're considering doing still a couple of festivals here, even going far, like Australia or even Europe. We do Europe every year. And we feel very fortunate, really. And it's always amazing that this little project that I started in my basement with a bunch of losers, really, like we were terrible. We were terrible. We're just slightly better than terrible now. But, man, it's amazing that when you show up, there's people that are willing to spend their hard-earned money on buying a ticket and coming to see the band. And it's really amazing. We're very fortunate, really.
That's so cool. So on the flip side of things, you're known for your bass playing prowess and in the industry, and talk a little bit more about the style of your bass playing. And on the flip side of that as well, tell our listeners about the gear you use in the studio opposed to the gear you take out on the road with you. Talk a little about all the above.
Sure. I always think of myself as a somewhat mediocre bass player. I learned a lot from the people I encounter along the way. Our first record when Don Dokken was producing our record, we were very lucky to have Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple in the studio with us. And Glenn, not only is a fucking brilliant singer, but he's also a very talented bass player. The guy's fucking amazing. And him and I got along fine. So I learned quite a bit from him. And what I learned is simplicity, really. And so I try to be as simple as I can. I always remember this quote from the drummer of Rose Tattoo, the original drummer, that said, he said, "I'm here to do the bare minimum." And it's kind of true. As a drummer, a bass player, you don't want to shine too much. You just want to be there for the other guys, the singer and the guitar player mostly. So my style is very simple. I do the bare minimum that's required for the song. As far as gear, I've been playing, we were lucky enough to get endorsed by Gibson back in the day. Nice. So at the time, Gibson owned Steinberger bass, the headless bass, they called it. So I still play that. I had a P bass for a while, but I almost never play live because I think it's too heavy across your shoulders, that is. So I still play the same Steinberger. I got a GK, a Gallon Kruger from the 80s, same amp I had in the studio in 1984.
Oh, cool.
It's been revised a few times. We were endorsed by Ampeg for a while, so I still got that cabinet, the 810, the famous 810 classic gig. I don't use pedals. I just go straight in the amp. I don't even like to have a wireless system, really. I think it affects the sound of it a bit. So I go straight with a cord, quarter-inch into the amp. It's very basic, really.
Nice.
And that's what I do. And I always kind of remember something that, what's funny, because Chuck Norris just died a few days ago, and Terry and him were in the same martial art club in Los Angeles. So Chuck came to a show one time early in the days at the Whiskey, and he came backstage, and we were having a couple of beers, And he told me, he said, you know, you're pretty good, but you forgot to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always remember that. Because now when I go on stage, I breathe. I sacrifice my playing for my breathing. And I think that makes a better experience.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, take us back to that. You talked about starting a band in France. Talk a little bit about moving to LA and that process.
Yeah, well, we started in '78. My buddy, I got a good friend that went to school together. One time he showed up with this vinyl. I never heard of it. It was Running with the Devil. The album cover was just amazing. Yeah. And he played this thing, and Running with the Devil. Van Halen, of course, starts with those 4 bass notes that are so simple and solid and distorted. It was just, I was like, what is this? Is this a bass? And I was like, oh, I got to do this. So being in France at the time, we thought, that London would probably be more friendly to rock and roll than Paris. Paris was actually very pop, very jazz, not really rock at all. Mm-hmm. So we went to London in probably 79 or 1980 perhaps. Stayed there for a few weeks. It rained every fucking day. Yeah. And I thought, you dude, if we're going to struggle and starve, we got to do that with a little bit of sunshine. So we opted for California. Wow. And we just managed our way there. It took a long time to get there because we couldn't afford a ticket all the way to LA. So we went to New York City first, and then pretty much hitchhike across the country to get to Los Angeles, arriving in 1984. I remember it because it was the Olympics when we arrived. It was the city was on fire, really. They had lights everywhere. And it was a great vibe. It was the closing ceremony of the Olympics. So 84 it was. And man, at first it was really a bit of you sleep on the beach, you sleep in the car, you sleep on a bench somewhere. The weather is fantastic. We were all 20 years old. We didn't care, and it's slowly, surely you start to hang out at the clubs. You meet other people, how that goes. It takes forever and ever and ever, really. But the era, the times, or the people of Los Angeles at the time, they were so friendly, so supportive, and so understanding. It was just a great source of inspiration to hang out every day with guys like Bret Michaels or Jenny Lane or Slash always at the Rainbow. It was just great. You were like, man, if those guys are here and they're doing it, then I'm here too, and I could do it too. And it was just constant inspiration. It was fantastic, dude. Fantastic.
Oh, so cool. I guess it would behoove us not to, dive deeper into the XYZ's 1989 debut album. It was released on Enigma Records, obviously with Don Dokken on producing. You said, you had Glenn Hughes in the studio helping out as well. But, that album held its own within that landscape, and the rock landscape was starting to shift from that AOR sound at the time. But, man, that album is a banger. Can you talk a little bit more about the creation of that album and the songwriting that went into making all those songs happen?
Yeah, I'd love to. We were signed to, prior to Enigma, which was really EMI at the time. We were signed to Atlantic Records for a demo deal in '86. So we went in the studio, Cherokee. Motley Crue was the band across the hall. It was just great. We made this record in '86. We were so proud of it. We were like, yes, dude, we're fucking doing it. But Atlantic didn't like it. So we sat on those songs for a long time. We sat there. We played the clubs and just struggled a little bit, And eventually in '89, which, as you pointed, was kind of almost the end of the party, really. I think we got signed a little bit after Want, because when Want got signed to Columbia, kind of like, oh my God, this is probably the last band in town that's going to get signed. It really kind of started to be the end of an era. So I got we were very lucky to get signed maybe a few months later, and we used some of the songs that we had from the first record we made at Cherokee, and then Duncan came in and kind of revamped a few things. Some songs he liked, some songs he didn't. So we kept the one he liked, and we went in the studio with him, and it was fucking awesome, dude. Because at first it was just rehearsal, and he would grab the mic or grab a guitar. He would play with us, and it was kind of amazing. Because I thought, man, wow, we're here in Hollywood. This guy's helping us out, and we're going to make a record. And this is all because I got together with a couple of losers in my basement in 1978. It was just a great time, dude. And to have Duncan was actually at the very same time releasing his record. So we had a couple of guys in the band. He had John Norm from Europe
yes.
In the band. So John was always at the studio every day, and he helped us out quite a lot. He's a great, great songwriter, this guy. Fantastic. Yeah. And then he had, who else did he have in the band? I think for a minute, he had Mickey D from Scorpions.
Yes.
Yeah. So before Motorhead, Mickey was in Duncan for a minute. So he was at the studio every day. So we were surrounded by those people. They're a bit older than we were, but they were so talented and so willing and friendly to show us the tricks, And it was an amazing experience for me to watch Glenn Hughes take my guitar and show me how to do the chorus. I was like, wow, this is just great stuff, dude. And so it was, and now that I recall it, I wish we could have captured the same amount of input on the second record that we did a few years later on a different label. We were not surrounded by the same type of people then, because it was already the grunge era, and it was not as friendly. People were not as friendly and as welcoming, and it was a little bit colder of an era. But that first record, yes, I think, to be fair, we got really lucky. 1989, we got signed, I think, in the summer of '89. And it was really, I must admit, kind of the end of an era. I felt it a little bit. We didn't really come to terms with it till 92 or 93, really. But it kind of felt like you had this big party thing, the Motley Crue years, I call them. That it was going to be replaced with the Nirvana years, and it was a completely different attitude, different wardrobe, different drugs, different booze, different sex life, different ways to look at the world. It was a shift, and I guess such is life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that album you were talking about, 1991, Hungry, on Capitol Records. Eric and I are both big fans of both the first two albums. I know you talked about it. I know it didn't do as well, and partially because of the shift in the climate. But there's some pretty good songs on there.
Yeah, it was a great record to have. Capitol had a little bit more budget, if you will, and give us more space and more time to do it. And it seemed at the time, really, that money was no object. We went from the best studios to the best studios to the best studios. And they had catering for us and limos and all that shit. It was like fucking the money was crazy. And so we decided, well, shit, let's kind of stay in the studio as long as we can. We're in there for 6 months or so. And we met all kinds of great people in that studio. Very, very, very good times. But we could feel, I think, that the party was over. And Los Angeles was different. The streets were not packed with kids with long hair anymore. It was not a leather jacket and cowboy boots anymore. It was more of a Seattle thing, really. It started to trickle in, and it was kind of interesting because we still had the same A&R guys that would tell us, hey guys, And don't change your lyrics. We still, you got to talk about girls. Boys chase girl. That's what we want to hear. I was kind of somewhat trying to move a little bit away from that because I thought the times were a little bit different. But no, we were still very, very much guided by the old school of rock and roll. Our record label did not want us to be more Seattle at all. They were like, fuck this Seattle. Do what you want to do, you know. So even though we were slightly influenced, I guess, by the radio, which was kind of Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and so forth, you know, we still we still wanted to stay true to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll that kept us going, you know.
Absolutely. So I guess we've talked to many artists about the shift of that era from, you know, the AOR sound to the grunge sound, and some artists will argue that, hey, you know, it was the label's fault because they were signing anybody and everybody, and the AOR sound got oversaturated. The bands weren't as good, and the songs were not as good, and the musicianship wasn't as good. And then the flip side, other artists will say, well, yeah, the Seattle sound was being shoved down everybody's throat, and so there was nowhere for the AOR sound to go. But, you know, let's get your ideology on what caused the shift.
I think, you know, honestly, you could try to blame the labels, the radio, the people, the public, but I think at the end of the day, you have to blame life itself. Nothing lasts forever. And the 70s turned into the 80s, turned into the 90s. Every era has a little bit of a different soundtrack. You know, Elvis was in the 50s. And then you had Jefferson's Airplane in the 60s. And the 70s were all about the Studio 54 in New York City, you know, dancing your night away. The 80s were all about Van Halen and Motley Crue. And the 90s, you know, every era, I believe, has a different vibe and a different soundtrack. What's curious about today is the soundtrack today, as we speak in 2026, is a lot more difficult to narrow down. Yeah. I'm not sure what it is, but I think it started maybe 2005, 2006. There was so many different versions of styles and vibes and cultures that nowadays it's so rich with everything that it's hard to really find the trend or the thread, if you will. I think possibly with Taylor Swift, which I'm far from being a fan, to be fair, but she did kind of bring back a little bit of that. One great, strong, powerful tour, and it somehow brings other bands to try to do the same thing, even though it's kind of synthetic and not really organic on any level, really. But I think it's a sign of the times. Every decade has a new hero, so to speak.
Well said.
Yeah. We'll come back to XYZ, but I want to take it in a little bit different direction for just a second. 97, you took a little break from XYZ and you were in a band called Puzzle Gut. You guys had one album on self-titled on Interscope Records. Can you talk a little bit about the formation of that band?
It was kind of an interesting thing because, you know, we came back from tour with XYZ and the tour bus drops us off at my apartment on Fountain Avenue in Hollywood. The first night you go to sleep. You get up, you're like, okay, we're not playing tonight. And so you drink a lot of coffee and you drink a lot of booze and you try to make it through the day. And 2 or 3 days later, you're sitting on your couch and it's really depressing because there's no tour bus anymore in the parking lot and you don't have to get dressed to play the show that night. It very, very much is an empty syndrome. So I thought, fuck it, dude, I'm going to start a new band. And I did. I kind of recruited a couple of guys. Had really not a great direction to go. We kind of got to the punk thing just because it kind of was different from what we did in the past. And for some reason, we said, fuck it, let's play the whiskey, let's play a couple of clubs around town. And eventually there was somebody from Interscope in the audience that took us to dinner, and we were shocked, because we were just kind of started. And it was a great time, I must say, because Interscope at the time was a very powerful label, still is really. And they got us the Iggy Pop tour immediately. So we were on the road playing really stadiums. It's all of a sudden we're playing 20,000 people. And it was like, wow, all that for a little bit of punk music, It was kind of interesting because lyrically we're free to go crazy, really. We were more of an abstract band, where XYZ, we described our lives every day, and we took what we lived and put it in our songs. Whereas Puzzle Gut was abstract painting,
Yeah.
We grabbed it from wherever it was. It was not describing what we lived. It was just going nuts. And it was a great time, I must say. I don't regret a minute of it. Like everything else, nothing lasts. I think this little alternative moment died very quickly. All those bands that were on tour with us, like Tonic or Sponge or Linda Perry, even all those bands. Linda Perry did great, but all those bands that were with us, Seven Dust, great fucking band, great guys. Eventually, everything changes.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about, getting off the road after a long tour and going back home and not playing a live show the next night. You're back in regular life mode. And I listened to Kirk Hammett talk about Metallica talk about when they started touring on the Black Album, they toured for 2 years straight, and all of a sudden he's home and there's no more touring, and he had a hard time adjusting to regular life opposed to life on the road. And I guess maybe can you expand on that a little bit more and talk about I guess maybe you're on the road and all of a sudden you're home.
Yeah, I'm sure Metallica is a different level, but in our level, on our little rock and roll level, you get into, when you're on the road, you get into this routine. You get up, the tour bus is there. You find it's always parked at the hotel somewhere. You go to take a shower. You do interviews. It's pretty busy. The day's pretty busy. Then you get dressed. There's somebody there to make sure your hair and your makeup is done right. And you go on stage, and after the stage, there's always the promoter taking everybody out to dinner. And then you go back to the bus. There's a bunch of girls. Everybody's naked. And it's a big party thing. It's constantly going. And when you get dropped home, and your agent or your tour manager says, "Okay, guys, get a couple of weeks of sleep, and then we'll see how it goes." Then you go home, and suddenly in your home, hey, nobody's going to pick your towels when you throw them on the floor, and nobody's going to cook for you. And there's no booze in your refrigerator because the promoter didn't put it there. And then so you realize wow, even though the guys are still in the next room and you still kind of play a little bit of acoustic guitar at night and you still kind of manage to stay in the musical realm of things. But suddenly all the people that were there to help, the promoters, the assistant, the roadies, the groupies, the radio, they're all gone. They're not there. And it's a very empty feeling. And in some ways, the first couple of days are like complete misery, really. Complete misery. But eventually, you go to the market. You go get yourself a little bit of food, and you get some booze to make it through the night, and eventually you make some phone calls. Yeah, I'm back in town. Why don't you guys come over? We'll have a little bit of a party, that type of thing. You kind of get back to what it was before you left, and you make it through. But yes, I would imagine that it's the same for everybody, whether you're AC/DC, Metallica, or just little XYZ. Man, it's so depressing to get home and to watch the tour bus disappear into the sunset. It's very, very hard.
Yeah. In 2005, there was a demo album that was kind of an unofficial release, Rainy Days. Can you talk a little bit about those demos? Are they from back in the early days, or are they stuff you did after?
That's something I'm not really sure what's on it, because this kind of was a little bit of a. I was so involved with Puzzle Gut at the time, so I kind of lost touch of what the other guys were doing. But those are demos, I think, that we wrote very early in the game. Some of them were in France, some of them in England, possibly, and then some of them in Connecticut, because I lived in Connecticut for like a year trying to find my way to California. Yeah. And so it was songs that we put together with acoustic guitars here and there, you know, and then eventually we thought, we'll put some real beef on that. And I think it was released at the time where it was like a semi-acoustic kind of culture at the time. I think Tesla started this, where the coffee shop thing was cool, and you could strip your songs down to just acoustic and just the vocals. So we thought, I was not so involved with that, but I did finish a lot of the lyrics for Terry, and he did it. And it was kind of a fun thing to do. What's funny is when you write a song, not today, because AI makes it perfect immediately. Yes. But back in the day, when you wrote a song, you had to first capture it on cassette, and then you had to bounce that to a 4-track player you could add a little bit of this, add a bit. It was rough going. And what's cool about those is they're rough, and that's the beauty of it. Whereas today, I've been messing with AI here a little bit with my guys, and it's just, man, the first draft is so brilliant. You like, oh my God, I can't touch this thing. So it's a complete different things. I think the acoustic thing, the rough, very rough demos are charming in a lot of ways, very charming. Whereas today, if you were to do a demo with AI, I mean, all you got to do is come up with a good prompt and a couple of good lyrics, and it sounds really, really, really finished. So it's when I look back at those rainy days, but I think they're kind of charming, really, because they're so rough.
Oh, that's so cool. You know, XYZ released Letter to God shortly after the band reunited in the early 2000s. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about creating that XYZ music all of those years later?
Yeah, you know what? I think Letter to God was a bit of a different animal. It was always Terry and I are best of friends. I talk to Terry every couple of days, and as solid as our friendship is, we always argued about simplicity versus complexity. Terry's a very talented guy. He plays a lot of instruments. He always pushes towards something a little bit more sophisticated, where I'm a simpleton. I'm a very simple person, and I just want to keep it AC/DC like, really simple stuff. One note for the bass, a couple of notes for the guitar, Keith Richards style. I always want to keep it simple. So the argument between Terry and I, it's always a very pleasant argument, is I want simple and he wants complex. So when he did Letter to God, I kind of said, you know what, I'm going to step out and I'm going to let you do your thing without telling you whatsoever what I feel about it. So Terry did Letter to God. I was not involved. I did write the lyrics for the material, but I was not involved as far as production or playing the stuff. And Terry did what he did, and it's kind of what he did. It's very it's much more complex, much more elaborate, much more sophisticated than Face Down in the Gutter, and it's still a record that I listen to once in a while. It's not my cup of tea, if you will, and I think if we were to do another record, I would try to fight for simplicity.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, I guess that kind of was my next question. I was going to ask you, like, if you're still writing songs, and you kind of answered that one. So that's great that you're still at it. What is the XYZ vault like? Is most of the stuff been released, or is there? Do you guys ever talk about it?
Terry calls me once a week. He said, "Finish some lyrics for me," and he has a different song every week. And I finished the lyrics, and we put it together. And Terry might release a CD in the near future, I think perhaps early next year, of all the songs we wrote for XYZ, and that today we may not release as XYZ simply because the market is not really there, if you will, and the financial reward for releasing a CD today is zero. So I'm not saying we did it for the money. We never really did. But back in the 80s, the money was great. And today, there's no way in hell. There's no publishing money. There's no royalties associated with everything. So it's kind of the bands that do it, unless they're Metallica, AC/DC, or like massive names like that, it's financially a loss, if you will, and you're only doing it in order to get back playing shows, hoping people come and buy your T-shirts. Really,
well, fair enough.
In our case, financially, it would be somewhat difficult, I think, to release a CD because there's no stores, and you don't walk to Tower Records on Hollywood to buy a couple of CDs. You don't walk to Strawberries or Blockbusters. This is a completely different world. I don't think people, the only CDs I see are at Goodwill.
Yeah,
pretty much. I think maybe every city has like a vintage store. I live in Las Vegas, so here we have a vintage store where they do carry CDs and vinyl and things. And I'm sure in Chicago, there's probably a couple of stores. But basically, the consumers today don't go to a store to buy a record. They either download a song or rip it up from YouTube. And there's really no financial carrot, so to speak, to give to the artist.
And that's why merch is so important now.
Yeah.
But I got one last question for you, then we'll leave you alone for the evening. To kind of take off your musician hat on this one, but maybe put your music fan hat on. But there's always an album for everybody out there that changes the way they listen to music as a fan. For me, it was Defenders of the Faith from Judas Priest that really turned me on to heavy metal. But for you, Pat Fontaine, what you alluded to, Van Halen 1, obviously, but is there another album out there that made you change the way you listen to music?
Absolutely. And it's funny you said that because British Steel from Judas Priest was on my turntable when I was a teenager constantly. But funnily enough, and you're going to laugh, it was Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That songs from Leonard Cohen. And it was this guy, Leonard Cohen. He could barely play guitar, really. He could barely sing, really. But it was his poetry and his sense of finding the perfect word that really got to me more so than Van Halen. And I still listen to Running with the Devil. But when I put Leonard Cohen on my turntable and listen to that record, which dates from the 60s, I think, or maybe early 70s, and it's just him with a fucking guitar, and it's so simple and beautiful, it's still a very, very great source of inspiration.
Fantastic. Well, we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
No, I don't want to promote. What I'd like to say is, thank God I'm old and I got to live in the 80s. It really, I don't know what's your generation, but I'm in my early 60s. But we lived a very special moment in time in Hollywood in 1984, 85, 86, 89. It was such an amazing party, sex, drugs, and rock and roll constantly, we were very lucky to live that, because I think today, because I live with a girlfriend of mine here in Las Vegas, and she has 2 teenage kids, boys, and man, they are nothing like we were. They don't go out, they don't party, they don't do drugs, they don't swear, they're polite, they dress well, they have respect for the elders. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We were a bunch of punks. We were chasing girls constantly, and believe me, we got a few of them, and we did cocaine and whiskey and we never slept. And I just feel, man, what happened to that? What happened to that?
Like you say, Oh, hold on one second.
No problem.
Oh, we got a tornado.
Yeah, we got a tornado coming through.
Wow.
You don't hear that every time you get an interview, but yeah, we have a tornado warning.
Right. We're talking sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and at the very same time, you get a tornado warning right there. It's beautiful, dude.
Yeah. Well, like you said, times have changed. I guess awareness. I guess when all that stuff is come full circle, but this is how things are going to work out. And once this is ready to be released, Jeff, the editing wizard over here, will clean us all up, and we'll sound like $1 million. How does that sound?
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Jeff. Let me know when it's out. Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's been fun.
Pat, thank you so much. Yeah. It was an honor.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
said